I would like to welcome all of you warmly to this session. Before we begin, I would like to wish all of you a wonderful International Coaching Week. And I think there are so many sessions happening around the world at the moment. It's a busy time for all professional coaches. And you must have chosen this session and to be here today, I believe, because you are deeply curious and you are deeply committed to client transformation and looking at possibilities of transforming our clients in new, expanded ways. And this session, I believe, is a unique session considering that we go beyond the reflective practices that we usually discuss about. When I say usually, very often, as professional coaches, you are aware the transformation that we create in our clients is often very cognitive. While there's a somatic component to it, while there's a body component to it, or emotional component to it, very often the coaching that we deliver tend to be cognitive. However, in this session, I look forward to sharing with you possibilities that are way beyond the cognitive processes. And I must uh, inform all of you, if not let all of you know, that this might not be mainstream coaching and this may not be for everyone either. But I am very, very happy that you are here, that you are curious, that you would like to learn about this area. And the very first thing that I would like to mention to, I'm pretty sure that you already looked at my bio. Nevertheless, I would like to very briefly share with you that I'm a registered eclectic psychotherapist. And also, as you have noticed, I'm an ICF MCC. So all the work that we do deeply, ethically, legally, and with deepest responsibility. And this is a very brief sharing today to introduce emerging areas of professional coaching with the professional community, ICF community particularly. So I am very excited for all of you. And once again, thank you very much for joining me today. I really deeply appreciate. I believe at the moment you see my screen looks, yeah, I believe you see me well. Let me double check. All right, okay. So during this sharing, consider this as a lecture. The reason being, this is a new area of exploration for, especially for professional coaches. Therefore, I love creating interactive spaces, but considering it's a new area and it's not so much about you, it's really about this methodology. When I say it's a new area, it is a new area for professional coaches. But psychedelic integration is not necessarily a new area even for human civilization. Even our ancestors used psychedelics. And I also strongly believe in order for us to arrive at where we are in human evolution, we have come a long way. I see that someone is requesting to record this to your laptop. Rather than that, we are recording this session on our end and we will be sharing the recording with you, right? So bear with me. You will receive the recording after this session via email. Okay. So once again, I would like to wish um, wonderful International Coaching Week for those who are joining at this last few minutes. And now let's dive in. So today's topic is transforming your client beyond conscious mind, psychedelic integration coaching. So some of might have had psychedelic experiences, deeply transformational experiences. Some of you may be curious about what psychedelic integration is. Or some of you might have thought, what is psychedelics? What is this about? How do we transform the client beyond conscious mind? So we are about to discuss that. And I see some of my colleagues, those who are in my network, joining me pretty much in every session. So this is a session very basic compared to the sessions that usually you attend, especially the psychedelic integration lecture series I'm doing at the moment. Nevertheless, I'm so very happy that you're joining me and supporting me in this space. So, regardless where you are in your understanding of psychedelics, let us dive in and try to understand uh, as an introduction what this really means. As we begin, I would like to clearly specify that this session, this dialogue, solely intends for education and harm reduction, and our focus is focused on healing, life enhancement, and spiritual development. And this session is intended for 18 plus audiences only. And continuing on, also make a note during this session, I may mention areas of mental disorders, trauma, challenges, and similar mental conditions. So please engage with caution, especially if you are someone who is highly sensitive. I think it's very important that you engage in this session with caution. All right. So as we continue on, as you noticed, the topic is transforming clients. And you, as a professional coach, I believe most of you are here, are professional coaches, as this is an ICF event. The word transformation is very familiar to us. So we need to really ask, what does transformation truly mean? Transformation has many forms. I think there is no right or wrong answer to transformation. Sometimes it may be a aha moment that you create with your clients that would be considered as transformation. Perhaps sometimes someone would talk about an experience of spiritual awakening as transformation. It really doesn't matter. But what is important is grounding ourselves and understanding what transformation means in this context. So, according to Oxford Dictionary, transformation is thorough or dramatic change in form or appearance. And in this case, in this session, we focus more on the change in the form. And of course, usually change in the form is followed by appearance. Simply speaking, when someone becomes healthier, stronger, their appearance also transforms. So continuing on. Now, when we talk about transformation, you know that if we take a pause and then if we really think about our life, your life at the moment, what are the areas in your life that you are aware change is necessary? But the change is not that easy. Now, this is not just only for you, you can also think about your clients as well. Very often, we know that certain habits, certain emotional patterns, certain things that we do may not really fully serve us. And we also intentionally seek change. We want to change. Even as professional coaches, we sometimes find it quite difficult to change, although we know that we should. Now, just to give you a simple example, someone is smoking, and this person is well aware that smoking is harmful. And if they could stop smoking, that's great. And perhaps they are already intending and also sometimes taking actions to make this change. But we know a habit like uh, smoking is not that easy to change. And it can expand into all areas of our life. It can be a habit like a dependency like smoking cigarettes, alcohol use, or any other use of substance. Perhaps we want to, as professional coaches, one of the things that many of the coaches I have noticed struggle with are reaching out to the right clients, creating the right content, being visible in social media, creating a website, reaching out to the right organizations. No, we know that these are the right steps to take. Even then, there are certain challenges for us to really strive and take those actions. Perhaps beyond that, there may be other certain elements. Sometimes we lose temper. Sometimes we have a specific way of feeling. Sometimes we have a specific emotion that we would like to mend, transform into a more what we would call a more positive, not an emotion that would serve us well. Nevertheless, even though sometimes we make an effort, we might not necessarily be able to achieve it that easily. Perhaps you notice yourself in these areas, or you notice this in your clients. And I think in clients, we very often see this. So I want to say one of the reasons why that we are not able to make such dramatic change in our life, if not why we cannot transform certain areas of our life, is because how our nervous system is hardwired. Now, before I talk about nervous system in depth, I would like to share with you this simple analogy. I know as professional coaches, you are very aware of analogies, metaphors, and you use them in your process, your coaching practice. Think about a snow mountain. Think about a snow mountain. When a first set of people take a specific route, the people who follow tend to usually use that same route. And in simple terms, it's because it appears to be the co- uh, safest path that is already available. Therefore, we simply stick to that path. And our nervous system is also very much like that. So when you engage in day-to-day activities, when you interact with people, when you interact within yourself, the way you feel, the way you think, the way you behave, the way you interact, are shaped by neural paths. If not, we call them synapses. In our nervous system, we already have pre-existing paths that determine how we operate. Now, from the very moment you were born, or actually even before you were born, some of these imprinting already were created. How you are going to behave, how you're going to look like, and so on, through the genetics that we received from our ancestors, for an example. And then, while you were in your mom's womb, um, the experiences that your mom had, and then when you were born, how certain identity, certain associations were implied on you. Like, for an example, your religion, your nationality, the languages that you speak, your belief system, your value system. They were all mostly implied on you. You did not have absolutely freedom to decide who you were. From a very young age, they were implied on you. And this process is important because when you learn how to um, operate in your environment, your rate of survival is higher. Therefore, these things that are implied on you are absolutely very important to begin with. But however, you also notice that your beliefs, what you call your values, what you call your associations, even what you call your identity, in that case, is a construct of what has happened to you, what has been implied on you, what has been passed on to you through your ancestral lines. So as you engage in this, already what you know, what you have been told, you create synapses in your nervous system, in your brain. And in the future, just like the mountaineers always use the existing path, you start using that same path over and over again. Sometimes these paths have many connections, implications from the nervous system itself. And then when that happens, some of these paths become overused. Some of these paths become semi-permanent. We use those paths over and over again when we are in the right circumstances. Now, to give you an example, if someone is in a stressful situation, they smoke, relating to the previous example. So that means how they cope up with stress. Now, many people, while they are working in the office, when after a meeting, they will discuss stressful content. And then the next thing we know is that they go for a smoke break. So this really means is how this person has learned to cope up with stress is to use a set of pre-existing knowing that smoking can create some kind of stimulation in their nervous system so that they would be able to cope up with this knowing. So our brain, our nervous system has these pre-existing parts, and unconsciously we use these parts over and over and over again. When we lose temper in a specific situation, although we should not, we lose temper anyway. The reason being, we use a specific survival network that resonates with fight response. And sometimes when we feel deeply sad, we disassociate from ourselves from the world, our friends. We go into our little space. And that is a pre-existing network that we already know to use when we're in that specific situation. And it's the same, the language that we use, how we like things and dislike things. And that's why that things familiar to us, we always process in a specific way. It limits us. And if we bring this analogy even further, it's almost like these different colored glasses that we are wearing. The way how we see the world, it's almost like we have different lenses, different colored glasses that are attached to our nervous system, that is attached to our perception. So how we see the world is using those specific lens. Like for an example, when you first looked at me, you started creating a specific image about me. Who is this guy? Especially those who didn't know me. You thought, based on how he speaks, he must be this, might be this nationality. Based on his accent, perhaps he's this nationality, or he must be from this part of the world. And also based on the way how I come across, the way how I behave, you already decided, is he trustworthy? Is he not? Is this session going to be worthy of mine? All of that. Now, these are all these are all certain perceptions you created about me. Well, if you're curious, I'm from Sri Lanka and I'm based in Thailand, Bangkok. And coming back, all of these perceptions that you created about me, more than about me, it's about you, what you know about someone like me, or the specific glasses that your mind is wearing. It's nothing wrong. It's important, in fact, because we live in a hostile universe. There can be a lot of dangers. Now we have come to urban cities, so we do not necessarily experience threat in the same way our ancestors experienced when they were in the jungles and the forests. But in order for us to survive in our environment, this process of making assumptions, judgments is very important. But when we do that, what we are really doing is we are looking through certain lenses that we have been, if I may say, conditioned, predominantly conditioned. So we look at the world through conditioning. We look at the world through those existing neural networks. And so is your client. When clients, you see sometimes that it's so obvious that client could transform themselves. It's so obvious to you. But for the client, it may not be obvious. Even if the client is aware of it, the changing of it, like from smoking to stopping smoking, it's not that simple and straightforward. Continuing on, I'd like to do a little bit of an introduction first, why this happens. Now, if you come to think of this cat, this is one of my favorite examples. You notice this cat gets ejected from its place. We call it an involuntary muscle reflex. Obviously, if I ask you why, probably it might look humorous. You might not realize what it is, but if you do, you realize that the shape of the cucumber represents a snake. So the cat's evolutionary genetic knowing, genetic awareness is has the information that the shape of the cucumber could be a snake, and snake can be dangerous. Perhaps this cat is from North America, where there are no snakes as such. But this is not a unique thing that is happening to only this cat. This is something that happens to cat family across uh, all uh, all around the world. The reason is the ancestors of the cats, when they were bitten by snakes while they were crawling into safety, our genetics decided to store that information so that information can be passed on to their offsprings and to their offsprings, so that in case if they came across danger, they can get themselves to safety faster. So you are starting to recognize that is a type of imprinting. It's a type of trauma imprinting. So I was talking about earlier superficially, like smoking, but you notice that even our survival mechanics are very strongly tied to our genetics, our neural networks, our brain, and so on. So this is what I mean by that we are strongly conditioned. And most of this conditioning is unconscious. And that is why this cat doesn't have to think to get itself out of its place. It automatically gets ejected. The reason is that it is unconscious. And that is why someone knows smoking is not good, but they still continue to do that because they can't have stop that behavior by thinking they are consciously thinking their way through. Many people struggle with this kind of behavior. And this is a survival mechanism, which we call trauma. I did a session on trauma yesterday. If you're interested, my colleague can send you an email with that session as well because it's very much adjacent, makes so much sense together. Bear with me, colleagues. Today I saw clients back to back. I'm a little bit exhausted, but I'm so happy to be here. All right. So looking at traumatic event, imagine a boy being attacked by a dog. And this experience was so threatening, threatening survival. Our brain, nervous system, even DNA perhaps stored this information in the body, in the nervous system. And then when this boy grew up to be a man, when they see a little dog, the man goes into that same response as what they used to experience as a boy. So when the trigger is present, we have a response. Because the trigger was created during a time where we experienced something traumatic, we call it a trauma response. And the interesting thing about these trauma responses is that they are unconscious. So when we experience certain challenges, like for an example, when we have to reach out to that specific business partner, when we have to make that social media content, when we want to establish our website and share the word that we are professional coaches, some of our coaches are still struggling. It may mean that they feel somehow unsafe to do that. And it could be related to their childhood. Perhaps their parents had these high expectations from them. Perhaps they grew up in an environment, they needed everything like they were perfectionists. So, therefore, at a later stage in our life, without even realizing what was really the traumatizing, challenging, or adverse experience, we end up experiencing challenges and difficulties. So, when your clients are finding certain transformation challenging and difficult, it is often not about them not being able to take actions, maintain accountability. It's very often related to their past, certain experiences that have conditioned their nervous system. And that's what I meant by the snow mountain with the pre-existing parts. So I think you are starting to gain a deeper understanding of the complexities of transformation. And when we talk about trauma responses, do you notice uh, some of these elements in your clients? Anger, irritability, disappointment, fear, panicking, over worrying, dissociating from what is most important, like what we would call procrastination, for an example. They know that this is exactly what I should be doing. This is exactly what I have been trained to do. Yet, instead of doing that, we just binge watch TV or we doom scroll. So you notice that sometimes these things we simply call out, we give them names, but they can be trauma responses. You may have heard about fight, flight, freeze response. How about phone response? People pleasing behavior, can't say no, prioritizing others. They prioritize others over themselves and end up harming themselves. And we call this phone response. These are very simple, classic trauma responses. One could do a lifetime research education on trauma. It's a very complex subject. Just to simply put, I'm inviting you to recognize, I'm inviting you to scan through this and see whether your clients perhaps experience these time to time. And if they do, if they are unable to break through such cycles, do you recognize it's because beyond just our thinking mind? Now, this topic today is transformation beyond your client's conscious mind. What is conscious mind? Conscious mind is our thinking, making connections, understanding. Those are the cognitive processes, and that we call that conscious mind. Yet, we know sometimes we lose temper. We know we should not smoke. We know we do not have to procrastinate. We should not procrastinate. We know that we should send that email. We know that we should make that call. Yet, sometimes we dissociate doing that. And it could be part of freeze response. So your clients perhaps experience certain trauma responses. Therefore, they are not able to truly experience that transformation. Why? As I said, it is unconscious. By thinking, by understanding, by reflecting, they are not simply able to break through. Because certain of these traumatic experiences, challenging experiences, are not only just simply stored in our conscious mind, which is our cerebral cortex, but also in our inner brain, the subcortical brain, and in our nervous system throughout our body. And also, even certain tissues in our body store this kind of trauma, this kind of challenges. Therefore, it no matter how much you would do coaching, sometimes even no matter how much we would do psychotherapy, talk therapy, we may not be able to truly help our clients to break through because it is an imprint that is in their body. It's not that easy by reflection, by conversation, that we can dissolve it. So you are starting to recognize that sometimes coaches, we try to work harder than the client, hoping the client will change. In fact, even for the client themselves, it is not that simple, straightforward through a reflective process by trying to take actions, accountability to break through those barriers. If you are doing the kind of coaching, quite surface level, mostly it's about thinking, reflecting, and then immediately taking actions, creating accountability. And if your clients are really good at efficiently taking those actions, following through, that indicates you're working with the right type of coaching clients. But if you are the kind of professional coach who would like to work deeply with your clients in a way that you'd like to work with um, deep emotion, you'd like to work with root causes, and perhaps you're also calling your coaching either integrative or holistic, then you might notice the kind of themes your clients bring to the table might not be that easy to break through. Do not be concerned. It's not only a challenge for you as a professional coach. It can also be a challenge for many psychotherapists and clinical psychologists even. And that's why at some point there's a clinical diagnosis, and sometimes people even have to go towards a medication controlled symptom management. Right. So we are trying to bring our attention today not about people who need that kind of diagnostic level, clinical level intervention. We want to talk about individuals who we consider as within the baseline mental emotional health. Do you know, now that we were talking about trauma, I want to slowly bring to your attention that according to WHO estimates, around 70% of the people globally will experience potentially a traumatic event in their life. But this number is still pretty questionable. The reason being, often people dissociate from their traumatic experiences because we can't cope up with it. And some of the challenges that we are experiencing were passed on to us by our generational line, our ancestors. So they wouldn't be able to directly recall a specific traumatic experience. But majority of the people, let's say like that, in the world have experienced something traumatic. Because trauma is also complex. Very often we think trauma is about this overwhelming experience, but trauma also can be long-term deprivation. For an example, not meeting basic needs, as simple as love and belonging, self-esteem needs over a long period of time, growing up as a child, for an example. So deprivation also can be considered as trauma. So often we don't count them in within this kind of surveys because people are unaware. So why I'm bringing this up is because this 70%, we represent this 70%, you and I, and also our clients, majority of our clients also are within this 70%. And also, I would like to share with you. So as we continue on, I would like to think about, so if, like I said earlier, there is awareness. We are aware we should not smoke. We are aware there is no reason to procrastinate, but we still do. It's difficult for us to actualize awareness. We are aware what should happen or what shouldn't happen, but we find it difficult to actualize. I think this question mark probably is already understood by you because we talk about it a lot. Right. So I would like to introduce to you that certain type of transformation, in fact, truly deep transformation, transformation in form requires not just only awareness, the cognitive awareness, cognitive transformation, but also unconscious transformation. What I mean by that is the transformation in our nervous system, transformation through our synapses, the brain networks, transforming the kind of memories we are holding in our body. So it's unconscious. That's why your coaching is extremely effective during the coaching sessions. They come to understand what I should do, what I shouldn't do, aha moments, breakthroughs, which we call transformation. But translating that into real life is not that easy. Sometimes it can be very challenging. It's because, like I was sharing all this time, it requires a deeper intervention. And that's why the topic today is transforming your client beyond conscious mind. So today we are talking about how do we transform our clients through their nervous system? How do we transform our clients through what is held in their body? How do we transform our clients through a more of a deeper spiritual, more of consciousness perspective in order to create the true actualized awareness? So, as your professional coaches, you know that there are many transformational practices that you could use in order to create this tangible, true breakthrough and the change in the form of our clients. And one thing that meditation, one of the most common ones. And you also often hear breath work. Perhaps if you are familiar with Hindu or South Asian traditions, you may have heard about Kundalini energy. And among those, another practice that is known to our ancient ancestors and recently have been very problematic in the world in terms of being able to use this powerful methodology is psychedelics. These are some of the practices that could create the deeper, unconscious, palpable transformation through our nervous system. So, as the topic suggests, I'm going to focus on psychedelics. And I'm also going to compare psychedelics with a little bit with meditation. So, if you're absolutely new to the world of psychedelics, I think it's worth doing a little bit of an introduction. Psychedelic, the word itself has Greek origins. Psyche means soul or mind, and delon, if not delos, means manifest or becoming visible. So psychedelic truly means mind manifesting, soul manifesting, or mind becoming visible or soul becoming visible. Visible to who? To yourself. When someone intakes psychedelics, the way I would like to call it, we enter the world of our mind. We go deep within ourselves in a way that we are not capable of doing unless we engage in a very deep specific practice like Kundalini meditation or breath work. Through those practices, people are also able to access such deep states of mind. And you may hear when we talk about, sometimes people say, an awakening, spiritual awakening, life awakening. Sometimes we also associate with the word enlightenment. And I strongly believe, based on my experiences and also my clients and patients I work with, that psychedelics have the power to create such profound states of mind. It's not just about the state of mind itself. It's not just about the mind becoming visible or mind manifesting. It's truly about the power of that state that enables transformation unlike anything on this planet known to human beings, as of my knowledge. So, moving on. Now that I'm about to talk about psychedelics, I want to share a little bit about my story, if you don't mind. As I mentioned earlier, this session contains strong emotional uh, components like references to trauma. So I'm going to talk about some challenging experiences I, myself, and my family have experienced. I would like to share with you this story not few years ago, not when I was young. I would like to share the story before I was born, way before I was born. In fact, this story begins when my mom was simply 5 years old. She was just diagnosed with a severe heart condition. She was a young, beautiful girl growing up in Sri Lanka with her mother, my grandmother, and four other siblings. And my grandfather used to be a railway engine driver. You would imagine this was about 60 years ago, 60 plus years ago in Sri Lanka. Someone 60 years ago being a railway engine driver is quite a status job, and they were well to do. And one day, my grandma walked into her bedroom. Her husband, my grandfather, has gone to work. She thought that he has gone to work, and there was a note on the table. And she opened this note. Among many things that is mentioned, the first sentence read that I am such an unfortunate man that I was not able to spend the rest of my life with you. And in that letter, it was a description explaining to her that he is going to end his life. So that's how she found out her husband committed suicide. And so my mother lost her father. And on that day, not only my mother, my grandfather, and my mother, grandmother, and the other five siblings of my mother lost their father. They also lost their status. They were forced into destitution before my grandfather's body arrived at their home. They were homeless because my grandfather's family decided to kick them out. Unfortunately, situation was such that my grandmother had no place to go. So they were forced into a little hut by the railway lines. Once, it was music to her ears to see how trains run on rails, and it became the haunting sound because they were right next to the railway lines, living in a hut. So you would imagine, as a young girl, someone who is considered as a beautiful woman, my mom grew up in an environment where she was sold over and over again many times and lived in poverty. And it's a story of a lifetime. And finally, when she had me and my sister, she was already suffering so much. There were days that our mother was the most loving, kind person. And then there were days that we couldn't simply recognize who this chaotic woman was. And my mother was the love of my father's life. It always has been, it always is. And he couldn't take how my mom was deeply suffering with what was happening to her. So he became very absent in our life. He provided with us to a certain extent, but he was very absent in our lives. So you would imagine two children, young children, growing up with a mother who has now, as a psychologist, I can diagnose her conditions. And touch wood, my family has gone through a beautiful journey of psychedelic integration and deep healing journeys. And now we are more united than ever. It took me a lifetime to bring them here. This is a story I tell very often, but it always makes me emotional. The reason is because of the power that it has opened me up to. And that's the conviction why I'm here. So, growing up with a mother who had severe post-traumatic stress disorder, in fact, in her case, it is CPTSD, complex PTSD, and having bipolar disorder, severe depression, anxiety disorder, many psychotic tendencies. Naturally, myself, my sister were traumatized. So we grew up with lots of challenges. And so as a result, in my early 20s, I found somehow numbing myself in alcohol. By the time at early 30s, when I started my journey with psychedelics, there were days that I consumed a half a bottle of vodka, if not 3 bottles of red wine, just to numb myself so that I could go to sleep. And it was a constant thing every single day. And I think if I did not come across psychedelics, regardless of my background as a therapist, background as a coach, I don't think I'm going to be standing here and talking to you if it continued. So when I went into my psychedelic experience, my very first experience, the reason why I'm sharing this image with you, this is the only image that I was able to create using AI to give you an idea what I experienced during my psychedelic experience, first psychedelic experience, my mind manifesting experience. For a lack of a better way of explaining to you this inner experience, something that has no visuals, something that had no necessarily a specific imagery, the best way I could share with you. If I may say, if the gates of the heavens open before your very eyes, the what would that experience be like for you? That was my first experience with psychedelics. I felt like the universe opened the gates of heavens before me. It was such a magnificent, powerful experience. And that experience grounded me to a reality that I could only explain with this image. I noticed that I am not just what I thought Fernando is, just my sense of self. I grasped that I am recycling earth. I am higher consciousness. if I may say that I am the universal intelligence just in the expression of Fernando. The experience was like my body was like this ancient mountain. It's almost like my body was made out of tiger teeth, butterfly wings, flower petals, the earth, the sand, the trees, all of it at the same time. Because this experience enabled me to dissolve my sense of self, dissolve my identity, what I have been told who I was, where I was born, what was supposed to be my religion, what was supposed to be my identifications, what was supposed to be my associations. This experience broke all that for a few moments. And during that process, I became the entire magnificent universe just in a second. And in that moment, I noticed all the suffering I went through. When my mother had psychotic breakdowns, when she was brought to hospital, I was just 6 years old. I would pick up from where my mother fell down and I would prepare what she was cooking. Not that I knew how to cook, but I had no option. I just continued on. Whatever that was prepared, I just cooked. And I packed a lunch bag for myself, for my sister, and for my mom. And I took my sister to the school by her hand and sat her down in her class, gave her her lunch, and carried the lunch box to my mother in the hospital. Not a place for a 7-year-old child to walk through. And this experience opened me to see that I am beyond those challenges. I am beyond the pain that I was holding in my heart. It opened my heart. It rejuvenated my heart. I went beyond consciousness of Fernando. I connected with the entire universal consciousness. This is an experience I have no words to describe. I woke up next day. I felt rejuvenated. I felt like I had all the strength within me, all the drive within me to do things that I could barely do, like taking myself to the gym, jumping in the swimming pool. Day two, I felt exactly the same way. I felt absolutely rejuvenated in a way that I wanted to do things in life that I dreamt of. Third day, fourth day, I already know that the substance I took, the process I went is over. But why am I still feeling like this? Sixth day, I woke up on the seventh day, I got out of bed and I fell on my knees and broke down into tears. The reason is that was the very first time in my life I learned what it is to be mentally, emotionally healthy. And I thought this must be how other people feel on a day to day basis. That was both freeing and devastating. And that's when I recognized the true power, true pain my mother must have felt, the true pain my grandfather must have felt, the true pain most people in the world experience, unfortunately, considering even the current state of the world. So I wanted to scream from the roof. I wanted to call all the world leaders and tell that healing is possible. So that is how I began this journey. I must say, after that experience, now I have no choice. but to follow this path that has opened up before my very eyes. As a child, I was very curious. I asked existential questions always. My mom says that she had no answers to me. And when I went through this experience, I wouldn't say I received all the answers and I know, but there was a deep fulfillment to who I was. There was a knowing that has no words that enabled me to find my ground again, perhaps for the very first time in my life. So I decided to dedicate my life to this powerful possibility. I decided to learn about it, and I decided to continue to develop frameworks. I did a postgraduate program a few years ago. I created a comprehensive trauma informed coaching competency framework, which I believe is the world's pioneering one. And currently, I'm doing a PhD in psychology. And the topic is how childhood trauma is transformed through psychedelic integration. So I'm still continuing to learn, continuing to develop frameworks around this powerful possibility. And that is why I'm sharing this message with you today. We should know this message. Moving on, like I said, this session is for harm reduction and education purposes. Our intention is to grow, our intention is to heal. What you see on the screen is something called psilocybin. This is the scientific name of this little fungi. In layman's term, they are called magic mushrooms, if not hallucinogenic mushrooms. They come out of cow dung, rhino dung, elephant dung. It's in our ecosystem. There are many different types of psilocybin mushrooms. And psilocybin mushroom is one type of psychedelic medicine. So from now on, I would like to refer to psychedelics as sacred plant medicine because they enable a sacred experience, a mystical experience that no sober state, no normal state, placebo state could create. And when I told you that I went through my psychedelic experience in a proper set and setting, I ingested magic mushroom tea. It was as simple as that. If you're aware about the psychedelic world, you may know that there are synthetic psychedelics and natural ones. So, for an example, LSD, if you may have heard about. LSD is one of the synthetic psychedelics. And then when we talk about um, plant psychedelics, natural psychedelics, you may have heard about magic mushrooms, you may have heard about peyote, the cacti, you may have heard about ayahuasca. These are different types of psychedelic plant medicines. So now that I'm introducing to you psychedelics, I must also share with you responsibly the harm reduction elements. Now, this is drug harm index from the UK by the independent scientific committee, by an independent scientific committee. If you look at different types of narcotics and drugs, you notice that alcohol is one of the most harmful ones at the scale of 72. Heroin, cocaine are very close to. And at the same time, mushrooms, if you look at, which is almost at the end of this curve, poses very little harm score if you compare it with other substances that are out there. In fact, it is the drug-specific impairment of the mental functioning and the drug-related impairment of the mental functioning. In simple terms, that we are in an altered state of consciousness, that we are not able to engage with day-to-day activities as such. So magic mushrooms, if not psilocybin, is one of the safest plant medicines that are out there that can be extremely beneficial for our growth, development, and healing. Yet, it's very important that we engage in these powerful medicines in the right set and setting. That means very often we hear sometimes people taking these medicinal substances in party setting, in chaotic settings, without right care, without the right guidance. Now, such cases can be challenging sometimes. The reason being, what magic mushrooms does during that experience is that whatever comes up for you, whatever you are prepared for, being magnified. One type of experience. So if the fear is our experience, if unpreparedness, if a shock, especially in like a party setting or uncontrolled setting, if something happened to us, perhaps that experience becomes magnified. And that could be traumatic for a person. And often those who hear about psychedelics, you may have heard about bad trips. And this is what we call potentially a bad trip. Are there other certain potential harm aspects to magic mushrooms? Yes, there can be. It's important that we learn them properly. It's important that we prepare for this experience in a very responsible, a timely manner. And once we go through this experience, it's important. It's a very abstract experience. It's very important we make that abstract experience grounded to our real world, our life, and we call that integration. And that's why you saw the word psychedelic integration coaching. Now the preparation process can be a conversational process. Both it can be mind related process, it can be a body related process. An integration process is really making meaning out of what happened. So you are starting to then already recognize both the preparation process as well as the integration process can be supported by professional coaches without having to engage with the psychedelics at all. As a coach, if you aspire, there's a huge community. There's a huge community, those who actually take psychedelics on their own, although it is not recommended, and they are seeking support. You never even have to do anything with the psychedelic substances. You can prepare your clients towards an experience with the right harm reduction understanding, educating them, help them understand how to maximize the power of it and create deep self awareness, intention setting using professional coaching. And for this, you need to be trauma aware. Without trauma awareness, you cannot work with psychedelic substances or psychedelic integration because coaching focuses on here and now, the present moment to the future. But psychedelic substances requires holistic intervention. You need to know how to integrate clients' past into the experience and then move forward. Because, like I said earlier, who we are, who we have become, our autonomy actually is shaped by our past, especially trauma, challenging experiences. So, as a professional coach, you can do both preparation and integration process, even if you do not involve in any kind of psychedelics. Now, since you are professional coaches, since you are exposed to reflective practices, I believe that you have some understanding of how our brain works, how our nervous system works. Therefore, I would like to invite us to a little bit of a deeper dive. So, when we talk about psilocybin, the psilocybin molecule, the smallest compound that becomes psychoactive is really what we call psilocybin. So the psilocybin molecule, once consumed, digests in our, simply digest. It doesn't require any kind of specific preparation. We can prepare a tea. Once we consume it, it transforms into a molecule called psilocin. If you are curious what this molecule's actual scientific name, it's 4-phosphoryloxy N-dimethyltryptamine. If you are curious, 4-phosphoryloxy N-dimethyltryptamine. and it breaks into psilocybin. Psilocybin is 4-hydroxy N-dimethyltryptamine. Tryptamine, if not dimethyltryptamine, is the actual psychoactive component in it, psilocybin. Now, there's something really interesting about psilocybin, something quite fascinating about psilocybin. And for that, we need to understand its therapeutic potential. Now, earlier, very abstractly, I shared with you my experience. And you also heard the term that it makes your mind become visible. I would like to give you a little bit of insight into it and help you understand what is happening in our body, our nervous system at the time of psilocybin is active in our body. So the interesting thing is that if you simply look at the psilocybin molecule is very similar to serotonin molecule. Now earlier when I said 4-hydroxy N-dimethyltryptamine, the 4 indicates where this oxygen and hydrogen molecule is bound to the main psilocybin molecule. And if you notice in the serotonin molecule, it's just a tiny little bit different where it is attached to the main molecule. Otherwise, they are almost identical. But why serotonin? Why Fernando mentioned about serotonin? I think you already know. Because serotonin is our regulatory neurochemical. The regulatory neurochemical, I think perhaps if you are neuroscientifically informed how our body works, you know that between two neurons, the presynaptic neuron to the postsynaptic neuron, we have a little space which we call synaptic cleft. Now, within this synaptic cleft is where when one neuron send a message through electrons, which we call action potential, when it reaches the end of the neuron, which is very often is the axon terminal, in the presynaptic neuron, it releases neurochemicals. And those neurochemicals communicate to the next neuron. And this is what we call neurochemicals. You're already aware, serotonin, dopamine, cortisol, many different types of neurochemicals. And based on what neurochemicals, what signal came, what neurochemicals released, the postsynaptic neuron understands through something called neurochemical receptors. The neurochemical receptors are able to recognize what is the chemical being released. Therefore, let's create another action potential. Let's create another message to the next neuron. So that's how we communicate in our body. So when the specific when there's safety in our environment, when the body receives the safe signals, our synaptic cleft gets filled up with serotonin. And the serotonin tell the next neuron, regulate the body, regulate the heartbeat, make the person feel calm, make the feeling relaxed. And that's what you're trying to do at the beginning of the coaching session, inviting the client to take deep breaths, maybe a quick body scan. What you're really trying to do there is to regulate the client. So what you're really doing is neurochemically inviting the client to release the serotonin into their nervous system, into the synaptic clefts, so that they can feel regulated. Now, earlier slide, we saw that psilocybin molecule is almost identical to the serotonin molecule, which means the serotonin receptors, which we call 5-HT2A receptors, are able to bind, or psilocybin is able to bind with our 5-HT2A receptors, creating not only regulation, but this magnificent altered state of consciousness experience. And that's what we call the mystical experience, often what we call hallucinations, if not synesthesia. And it also interacts with our sensory modulatory area of our brain, which we call thalamus. So that's why we experience synesthesia. People who go through this kind of experience say, for the first time, I could see the music. See doesn't mean seeing through eyes. It's seeing through mind. People say, I was able to taste the colors, not literally in their tongue, but in the cortices that we have in. Now, the taste doesn't exist in your tongue. The taste exists in the cortex. The color doesn't exist in your eyes. Color doesn't exist outside the world. Color exists in your visual cortex, within which vibration reached the brain, how the cortex decided what color to interpret. So we experience what is happening in our mind directly without the necessity for us to engage with the outside stimuli. And when I told you that I felt I was connected to the entire universe, I was able to experience myself like Earth itself, this old, wise mountain. That's my way of processing who I was, my sense of self. And I can explain to you from neurochemical perspective. And I strongly believe beyond just the neurochemical perspective, there's also mystical, energetic possibility within our us. It's the consciousness itself. There's pure consciousness. And please, if you allow me to say this, or if you if you are receptive to it, there is divine, there is divineness within ourselves. And we are not separated from the divine, if not universal intelligence itself. You come to learn this when we bypass something very, very important that we should know, which is default mode network. There are certain brain regions that make sense of ourselves. When you say yourself, when I say Fernando, the understanding of Fernando is hosted in these specific brain areas, which we call default mode network. What this experience, this release of psilocybin binding with the 5-HT2A receptors do is it reduces the function of the default mode network quite literally. We can do this physiologically. We can't stop it in any way. But there is a possibility using this little fungi, little mushroom that comes out of rhino dung, which is in our ecosystem, it helps us to reduce our sense of self. And all problems, our likes, our dislikes, our pain, everything is attached to our sense of self. When we are able to reduce our sense of self, that's what we call the ego death. The ego death. What is ego? I think very often people mix up between egoistic and ego. Egoistic is, you understand what egoistic means. Someone put their self beyond that they should do. Egoistic. Ego itself is your sense of self, your autonomy. And imagine a state that your brain reduces your ego. And in certain traditions, certain religious traditions, that's the hope. We do meditation because we need to reduce the attachment. Attachment to what? Our associations, our identity, our environment, to ourselves. Then we can experience something larger. And this medicine enables that possibility, which is what we call awakening, even a glimpse of enlightenment for that matter. Therefore, it's extremely powerful state. And you remain in this state while psilocybin is active in your body. And it usually ends its function within a few hours. Within 24 hours, usually there is no psilocybin actively in your bloodstream. So you are starting to recognize the function of psilocybin or psilocybin. Now, while it reduces the ego, while it reduces the default mode network, the function of it, which is once it happens, it increases the connection in our brain like never before, several hundred times more than usual. So this image that you see is an actual image between the placebo state, which means a state where one has no psilocybin in their body. And the other diagram, you see the number of connections in one's brain under psilocybin. So number of brain connections means heightened neural plasticity, ability to change, reorganize, rearrange, and process more information because of heightened connections. So this sacred plant medicine that is so humble, coming out of the dung of the cow, has the possibility to increase our neural plasticity, increase the connections of our brain. It is not something to be taken lightly. It is something extremely powerful. And during that, people experience abstract ways. They make sense in abstract ways. Often people say that they understood that everyone is interconnected, that entire universe is connected, that in our smallness, we do not recognize that. And that's what we call collective consciousness. We are all part of it. The separation is experienced within the human experience. We learn. And this is a common experience for many. I'm not saying that everyone arrives at this awareness in one go. I'm also not saying everyone is capable of arriving at this insight immediately. That's why I mentioned there needs to be a proper preparation process and there needs to be an integration process where coaches can help. So, what are some benefits of psilocybin integration? Increased neural plasticity, disruption of the default mode network. Now, when someone, remember I told you earlier, they are like our nervous system is like this snow mountain with pre-existing connections. During psilocybin integration, we are able to zoom out and recognize those connected states. And that's why anxiety, depression, where these connections are overactive, we are able to disrupt such overactive tendencies, neural networks. It enhances brain network integration. More brain network integration means more awareness, more breakthroughs. It enhances emotional processing. It interacts with our limbic system, our emotional system. It does something that what we call nervous system reset. And it reduces self-referential cognition. When someone says that I have depression, I have anxiety, very often they are over worrying about themselves. These thoughts are going in a loop. We are able to interrupt those loops. And that's what we call that it reduces the self-referential non-serving networks. It creates this deep mystical experience, transcendental experience. So people gain spiritual experiences under it. And then also it creates spontaneous healing. Like I said, I was dependent on alcohol. And after my first uh, ceremony, I did not touch alcohol. This has been years. Spontaneous healing. So let's not ground this entire sharing to my experiences. Let's look at research. There's plenty of research at the moment that's available. So let's look at the Johns Hopkins Center for Psychedelics and Consciousness Research. We found out that people with depression improve, especially in this case, treatment-resistant depression, 70% clinically significant improvement after one psychedelic experience. And among them, 50% of them remission to full baseline mental emotional health. Same with the cancer study. Over 60, nearly 80% of people found clinically decreased in the depression and anxiety. And about 70% of the people said it was their top 5 meaningful experiences of their life. I'll get to that in a minute. You might be thinking, Fernando, we don't work with people who have depression. We don't work with people who have anxiety. We are coaches. This is not relevant. Well, in that case, let's look at how about healthy individuals, mentally, emotionally healthy individuals. What happened to them? 50% of the people who experience this said it's the most meaningful either life or the spiritual experience. 80% of them said it's their the personally most meaningful experience that fits within the five top experiences. And 90% of the people who experienced one psychedelic treatment said that 90% of them said that their relationships improved, they felt better, their emotional, mental capacity grew, they became more creative, they expanded themselves. Now, before I move on to the next slide, I want to define what is this 80% personally meaningful or spiritually meaningful experience. So researchers asked, what do you mean by top five meaningful experiences? If psilocybin integration is one of them, can you tell us about the other experiences? They said, this experience is as powerful as the birth of my child. This experience is as powerful as the death of my mother. This experience is as powerful as the day I got married. Imagine that. And I witnessed for that. And I would say, apart from the people that I love the most in my life, the love for the people that I love in my life, that being the first most powerful experience, my first ceremony was the second most powerful experience I have had in my life, period. So, connecting back the dots, our brain, our nervous system has pre-existing networks that are limiting us, that are conditioning us, that we cannot simply break through by just consciously thinking. Powerful sacred plant medicines enable the possibility of zooming out and reconnecting our brain like it's the new snowfall. Now it gives us an opportunity to transform ourselves in ways that we did not know that we could do with a conscious process, like coaching or talk therapy. So the potential of this medicine is immense. Nevertheless, because of political agendas, because of high-level controlling agendas, somewhere in 1960s, these medicines were categorized under certain narcotics laws. The world now, with enough research, slowly opening up. Perhaps you heard recently in the US, ibogaine research, which is another psychedelic compound, plant medicine compound, became opening up the doors slowly. In Australia, there is research is going on. In the Netherlands, there is very strong research is going on. And in the Netherlands, the substance is available that you can purchase it and you can experience it in the right set and setting. I am based in Thailand, as I said, but my actual work, the transpersonal work, especially the ceremony we call it, if not the taking of the medicine, I do in the Netherlands within a proper um, legal setting. So my clients from around the world come to the Netherlands to experience this powerful possibility. I do the preparation either in person in Thailand or online, as well as integration. But for the psychedelic experience, they come to the Netherlands. So that's what I meant, that we do all this healing work fully legally with full legal compliance. And we take the right important harm reduction protocols when we do that in the Netherlands. So, like I said, this transformation is created through three stages of psychedelic integration process: preparation, the transcendental experience, which I call ceremony, where we experience our mind, then we integrate that abstract experience into our life. This is where professional coaches can come forward, preparing them through the preparation stage and helping them with the integration, having trauma-informed knowledge. And this is the protocol that currently I'm using in my research. It's a comprehensive protocol that I teach in our psychedelic integration classes. And before I end this session today, I would like to share with you this quote from one of my beloved teachers who passed away a few years ago, Roland Griffiths. He's a professor, psychiatry and neuroscience. He's a neuropharmacologist at Johns Hopkins University of Medicine. He said, I have come to think of meditation and psilocybin have been complementary processes for investigation of the nature of mind. And in fact, neuroimaging studies, the image that you saw earlier, he refers to those imagery, the two images that you saw, one being placebo brain, the other one being hyperconnected brain. These neuroimaging studies show that they both produce similar changes in brain regions related to sense of self. So when we meditate, the area that directly interacts with is the sense of self. And psilocybin directly also interacts with default mode network, the sense of self. And he further says, well, if meditation represents the true cause of the investigation of the mind, psilocybin surely represents the crash course. What this really means in layman terms, when professional meditators, those who meditate for 25 to 30 years, when they go through psychedelic experiences, they say that the wisdom that they gain through this long journey of meditation, they attained just in one psilocybin session. So you are starting to recognize this is not just only one person's experience. It is an experience that we can clinically assess, clinically recognize that it creates profound transformation. And that's why I believe around the world, many places are slowly creating the right safety protocols, creating the right legalities for practitioners to engage in this deep healing work. And if you're interested, I am doing currently a complimentary 12 months lecture series discussing specific aspect of how altered states inform transformation on the same topic every month, once a month, 90 minutes, like this conversation today. So if you are interested, we will be sending you an invitation with the recording. You are very welcome to join me, and it's absolutely complimentary. Of course, beyond that, I do teach this subject, and you might have already come to learn that I created world's first ever trauma-informed psychedelic integration advanced practitioner program. Not only it is the world's first ever program accredited by ICF, but also so far is the only program that is accredited by ICF. It's an 18 months to a 2 years program. You're very welcome to join if there's a calling there. And you know how to find me. Well, with all that, I wish you once again that the transformation, you find transformation in unexpected places, like the little mushrooms that come out of the cow dung. That has been my experience. Well, just not about consuming the mushroom, but engaging in that process in a way that it creates true transformation and doing it with responsibility. Do I, by any means, encourage you to consume mushrooms by yourself? No. Rather, I discourage you to do that. This journey, imagine many people believe it's one of the most powerful experiences in their life. If you're about to experience something so magnificent, so powerful, engage in that experience with intention, proper preparation, having someone who can guide and support you through that journey with full confidence, harm reduction, awareness, and keeping you in the center. With that, once again, I wish you a wonderful coaching week. I'm so honored that you spend this time with me. I hope that you are walking away with something tangible, something meaningful. And I hope today I have been able to create some value in your life. And if any of you felt a deeper emotion while I was going through my emotions, thank you for holding space for me. I think we live in a world where often emotion is disregarded. Emotion is a fundamental element of human beings. This medicine taught me how to embrace the deep emotions, celebrate those emotions. So thank you for celebrating those emotions with me. I send you love and light. I invite you to remain in Ignite professional community as we continue to share this wonderful, beautiful, life transforming information. With that, bye for now. I look forward to seeing you in the future. Thank you.